When I started the podcast, I went on, like, I had some recs about what to use and the software, whatever. And I went on Reddit to like look at podcasting groups to just be like, just like have extra community or whatever. And it was all like a bunch of dudes arguing about whose microphone was bigger.
I love those arguments too, because it's literally always like, oh, you're using the XT04? Oh man, dude, that's weak. You got to use the Z452, man. It's so boring. It's like,
It's so boring. And my microphone's been doing just fine. Hello, my darlings. Welcome to Ink Medicine Podcast. I'm here with my friend Tristan Crane, who is a quite famous queer photographer.
I feel like that's an exaggeration, but I appreciate that.
I mean, fame in the queer community is very subjective, but I would say people know your name. So some folks might know your name and some folks might not, but they should definitely go and check out your work on the internets. But right now, we're not going to be talking about that, although we could talk about that too. We're going to talk about tattoos and skin. But why don't you introduce yourself, your name, your pronouns, where in the world you are, and what is your favorite beverage?
Yeah, so my name is Tristan Crane. My pronouns are they, them, or he, him. Where I am geographically at the moment is north of Mendocino. I kind of split my time between there and Oakland, kind of decamped during the pandemic, like a lot of other folks. So I try and spend my time resting up here as much as possible. And currently my favorite beverage is coffee because it's what's getting me through my life.
How do you take your coffee?
Either black or an oat milk latte.
Okay. And what kind of, do you like the coffee? Like, so my partner and I have this battle of coffees where she likes the sour coffees and I like the bitter coffees. Like, where are you at in that regard?
More on the bitter side.
Like the earthy kind of French roast type of bitter?
Yeah, kind of dark. There's this one, my partner and I both love the same kind of coffee, which is lucky because we don't agree on a lot of other things. So we have a subscription from Sight Glass Coffee because that's how kind of intense our coffee need is.
Listen, it's, whatever helps, right? People have wine clubs, you have a coffee club. That's all good. That's so funny because I feel like I've tried Sight Glass a lot and I haven't found, well, this was a while back when I used to drink more coffee, but I haven't found the roast dark enough for me. So I have to ask you which one is the right one because I like their whole thing,
Yeah, they have some good sour ones too. We like their Blue Boon, which is definitely on the darker side, I think. But maybe I'll bring you some next time we hang out. And you can try it.
We'll Sounds great. Sounds great. I'm like a tea drinker over here, and I've been mixing I have a bag of random teas. Like I think a lot of people have a bag of random teas in their house, and so I've been like, oh, let me just pull out 2 random teas and mix them together. And this is like a Earl Grey and then like some sort of a German chocolate, ginger, something like whatever random tea I've had in there. So it's like a surprise beverage.
That actually sounds like an amazing combination. I love Earl Grey.
It's really good. Yeah, it smells like chocolate. It's good. So tell me, you've not been my client yet, so I don't know a lot about your tattoo journey. Please tell me, how did you start getting tattooed? How old were you? And what led you to getting your first tattoo? As much of your journey as you want to share.
Yeah. So my first tattoo was, I think when I was like 14, my friend did stick and pokes. And so I still have a couple of little stick and pokes, mostly on my feet and my toes. And I managed to actually conceal those from my parents for many, many years. And then I think at one point when I was 18, my mom looked down at my ankle and was like, "What is that?" I think it was like a scratchy little anarchy symbol or something like that. Very cute, very teenage.
Perfection.
Right. It's so good. A lot of nostalgia. And then I actually didn't get tattooed for a really long time. I was really broke throughout my 20s, doing the artist thing, living in San Francisco, working office jobs. The economy tanked. So I just didn't really get tattooed until I turned 40, actually. And then I had one of the stick and pokes, was kind of embarrassing. And I thought, I want to start getting tattooed as part of, I always knew I wanted to get tattooed as part of my own journey towards kind of reclaiming my body and being comfortable in my skin and customizing my body. I did that through piercings when I was younger. I kind of always knew I wanted to get tattooed, but I didn't really have a vision of what I wanted to get. And I wanted to wait until I had a more cohesive vision. So of course I don't have a cohesive vision yet, but I turned 40 and I was like, you know what? Like, F it. This piece on my ankle has always bothered me. I'm just going to get it covered up and see if I can get tattooed, because basically in my 30s, I started developing psoriasis, which is an autoimmune disease which presents in a number of different ways. But for me, it presents as a lot of like joint pain. And then I get these kind of scaly, painful patches on my skin. And a lot of times it shows up where the skin has been injured.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll get patches where I had like an old cut, something that happened even when I was 8. Like a psoriasis patch showed up there. So there's kind of I don't know, like a comorbidity with anything that happens to your skin and psoriasis. So I wasn't sure if I even could get tattooed safely, or if it would actually cause a flare up. So I found this artist I really liked on Instagram, and decided I'm going to go get a cover up piece as kind of like a test, just to see how my skin took the ink.
Did you tell them about what
Yeah,
you were thinking as far as like psoriasis and
yeah, it's pretty obvious. Like I have it, it kind of comes and goes, but it's tied to stress. It's tied to diet. I've tried diet stuff. I've tried everything for it, and we can kind of get into that too. Anybody listening who has psoriasis, I'm sure has a similar journey of, you kind of try so many different things to deal with it, because as an autoimmune disease, it's in you, and it's kind of like your skin and your immune system is attacking itself.
Yeah. Well, what I was wondering about, whatever people look like, right? Whatever people come in and however their skin looks, like I'm not concerned about that unless they tell me to be concerned, right? Unless they tell me this is something to watch out for. I'm wondering if I can take getting tattooed. If, of course I've had people with autoimmune conditions of all sorts. And so, yeah, I'm curious about if the person had any thoughts when you said to them, this is a test. I wonder if my skin can even take getting tattooed, if I'm going to have a flare up because of it, like how it's going to be reactive wise. And, if they had experience with that before, I think all of us are constantly trying to learn about the different things we might encounter with different folks. And then like the next person who comes in with the same condition, I would have something more to say about it. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This person hadn't, was, I think, a little less experienced than you are, and maybe hadn't encountered it before. We definitely talked about it in terms of placement. We also decided to not do color initially, and just see how things sit with, just with blacks and grays, or just black tones.
That's very smart. Yeah, because color is more reactive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've actually gotten a tattoo in color, and it did not respond well, interestingly, like further on. But the good news is this particular piece healed really perfectly. It settled really well. I'm really happy with the cover up. And then after that, I think like a lot of people, I kind of was like, oh, it's on. And I was like, okay. So then my next tattoo is from the same artist, and it's like a big thigh piece that like wraps around the back of my knee. And I kind of was like, you know what? forget it. I'm just gonna go for it now.
And that was also fine.
That one went okay.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of in between flare-ups. That was probably about 2.5 years ago. So I was kind of in between flare-ups. My skin was in a pretty good place. And then unfortunately in the last year, things have kind of been kind of flaring back up again. So I'm back on like medications and things like that for it.
And does it ever, like as you said, you had a cut from when you were 8 and the psoriasis came and attacked that area.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's the right language, but you had a flare up on that area.
Yeah.
So from in my experience with my eczema, which I think it's eczema, I don't know, I haven't, it seems like it's eczema, but it will travel around my body and
Mm.
show up sometimes in places of tattoos. I'll feel the raised edge of it as it's like all itching and getting all wild and burning and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So have you had the experience of psoriasis coming later onto a new tattoo, like after it's already
It's
healed and settled?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
happened now. And then I also in my latest piece, the one that had some color, that definitely happened. So I had a patch kind of near the piece that spread and now has kind of gone into the piece a little bit. And it looks interesting, actually. I mean, obviously it's not ideal. But yeah, and then occasionally I'll have a little patch that shows up in an older tattoo.
And what does it feel like? Does it, so psoriasis is like a patchy, scaly thing, like where eczema is like this intense, intense itching, and
Mm.
then it looks so wild, and then it goes away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like it will stay for like a month and will go away. So
Yeah.
very different experiences. So is psoriasis itchy, and what's the
It
experience of it?
is. Yeah, I think everyone experiences it a little differently. For me, there is an itching. Like I can actually now almost like predict when a new patch is going to show up because it'll start kind of like burning and itching, and then it kind of arises and it's so annoying because what used to happen for me is it would show up in sort of big, larger spots, and really common spots for people are like knees, like elbows, back of the scalp, and then like in body folds. So people will get it in their armpits and other places. It's very uncomfortable. So it comes up as itching, and then the scaling and the redness sort of develops, and sometimes there's burning depending on where it is in the body. When I sweat, it will get there, so it makes exercising really uncomfortable. It makes even going outside on when it's warm out, can be really really uncomfortable. It'll like crack. So I have like a pretty intense skincare routine that's like moisturizer, like rinse and repeat, to try and keep the pain down. But if I'm having a really bad flare, it's really uncomfortable. It's kind
Mhm.
of a constant low level pain.
So you would essentially, your body is in this state of agitation, like an autoimmune sort of
Mhm.
agitation. The tattoos, it might come and touch the tattoos, but in general, like you would still have it with or without tattoos, right? Or will
Correct.
tattoos make it worse? Will it make, like, if you were more heavily tattooed, do you think it would be worse?
That's a really good question, and I've done research, and if anybody's listening and has research, please send it. There isn't a lot of research in this, right? Because we don't really know, and there's a lot of speculation. Is there certain inks that are going to cause flares, right? We know that. I mean, some people respond poorly to certain brands of ink, certain colors of ink, right? Is there something in my skin or that people that have psoriasis where our bodies are going to almost like attack or try and reject the color? I don't know. I don't think that there's a correlation between me being tattooed and my psoriasis getting worse.
Hmm.
I think it's related to, age and stress and just the progression of the disease. And for me, getting tattooed was a way to kind of own and reclaim my own body, because there's been a really big component of mental health for me around having an autoimmune disease that's chronic, that's painful and visible, right? It's unsightly. It's kind of embarrassing. People comment on it. If I wear shorts, like you can see, like I have patches on my skin. I have patches on my legs. Like, I've had people ask about it, really blatant things, and
like
combined,
strangers.
yeah, strangers or people, people on set or whatever. It doesn't necessarily look sanitary, even though it is, right? It's not like an open wound, but it's an obvious difference. I mean, kind of. So people comment on your body the same way people comment on the bodies of people that have a lot of visible tattoos, right? And so for me, it was a way for me to actually kind of take control of what was happening in my body. And then even the pain of being tattooed, in a way, there's a link there for me between kind of the, like, choosing the discomfort of being tattooed versus being kind of at the mercy of the discomfort of this condition.
Yeah, for sure. Consent is huge, right? It makes all the difference.
Mm-hmm.
And what about piercings? Has that been, as you said earlier, it's a matter of injured skin. So your old piercings, is that also somewhere it shows up or no?
It hasn't, mostly because I'm trans, and the body parts that were pierced are no longer on me.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
and I haven't gone back and gotten. I'm actually pretty reactive to a lot of metals as well. So that's one reason that I haven't kind of gone back into the piercing world. I had a lot of cartilage piercings and things that never really healed properly.
Okay. Do you have any facial? I feel like I have this image of you in my mind of having maybe like a longer time ago, like before we were people who talked to each other. You had facial piercings. Is that not true? Is that just like something random in my mind?
Just ears. I did the like cartilage stack thing, very 90s.
And back in the day, it was all random metals. It was like stainless. They would say it was stainless steel, but I don't know if it really was. Like whatever the cheap metals were, some kind of combination of titanium, stainless steel, or whatever. But my old piercings weren't super happy, and then I would switch to gold. When I would want to keep the piercing, and it was fine. So there's some of that, and I've seen also just like how trends have changed in the body mod world. Tattoos have changed, piercings have changed. There's so much more emphasis on gold in the piercing world. Have you seen all of that? Like tiny little clusters and combinations of piercings all over the ear.
Yeah,
doing
actually, I love it. What's happened? I love that piercings is back, and some people are doing really creative, interesting things.
Yeah, and like gender-wise too, I feel like there's more men wearing like earrings and like necklaces and having more delicate piercings, and it's cool. Yeah, it's a cool direction.
It's very cool.
Yeah. So what are you thinking? So you're having a flare-up right now. In the last year, you said. Do you have plans for more tattoos? Are you putting them on hold? Do you have?
I'm kind of on hold at the moment to let my skin really settle down, which really hurts because I'm halfway through a piece, which is like y'all know my pain.
What are you working on?
It's a nautilus, like on my calf. I'm doing a whole ocean. Feel very drawn to undersea, deep sea creatures. So I'm doing a whole leg that's kind of ocean creatures from different artists. So, and hoping to get a piece from you. Also, I love your work.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm on pause, and I actually the artist that I'm working with also has a lot of health and kind of autoimmune stuff. So we've talked a lot about what her journey has been and what my journey has been. And she knew going in, it's right there on my skin. Like I can't hide it. Like, I pull out my leg and there it is. So we talked a lot about placement. We talked a lot about what might happen if a flare up happens. Unfortunately, after we did the outline, we went back in for a second session and did color, and my skin did not love that. It was a lot of the color actually didn't kind of didn't stay, especially the
Mm-hmm.
reds. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not my artist's fault at all. She's extremely skilled. She's been in the business, she's been a artist for like a very, very long time. I've seen a lot of her work. And even she said, "Oh, I've never really seen this happen before." So
Yeah.
it's 100% not her fault at all. I want to make that like really, really clear.
Yes, it's a good thing to make clear for folks who don't know because yeah, there's so many ways in which people can react. We're all different, our chemistry is different. And I mean, the other thing is we know what's in our inks to an extent. There's not a lot of, you can buy from the most reputable companies, and you still don't fully know because it's not regulated. And also just the systems, the powers that be don't give us the full access to knowledge of what's what. It's so
Mm-hmm.
much better now than it was like in the 90s.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, and there used to be metals and inks. There's not anymore. But
Mm-hmm.
there's still something about reds that makes if you will be reactive, like you're likely to be reactive to red or something with red in it, like a brown or
Mm-hmm.
pink or something.
Yeah, that's exactly what we were using. And we actually took a record of all of the colors and the specific inks that she used um, to see what happened. And so when I go back in, when things settle down and I go to finish the piece, we're just going to revamp the color scheme and come at it
Hmm.
in a different way.
For sure. And
Yeah, I felt really bad when I sent her pictures of it. She was like,
yeah.
"Oh no," she felt terrible, and she was like, "I've never seen this before," and she felt very apologetic. She was great, and I was like, "This is 100% not your fault. This is my skin."
Yes. Great. I'm glad you guys have such a good rapport and like you trust each other and trust is required on both sides. Like we're also, it's like if something happens and the person like fully blames you for it, that's really scary. Where it's, you did the best you could and like shit happens.
Yep. Yeah, yeah. I imagine on your end too. I mean, you kind of lose as far as what are people doing in the aftercare, right? Like the artist doesn't have any control over that, and that has a huge effect. Can have a huge effect on the outcome of the piece.
For sure, for sure that happens, and like I have my little aftercare sheet online, so nobody can like say, "Oh, I lost it." Like, well, you can go and look it up, and also you can Google in general, aftercare things, and people have different things that they recommend. And Aquaphor, something that's basic, cheap, doesn't go bad, um, nice to have on hand. Some people misuse, like you put too much of it on, and
Mm,
then your skin is not breathing, and if you were shaved and like you could have ingrown hairs because the Aquaphor is blocking the way for skin to like keep healing.
mhm.
So that can be an issue. People like you can't control what people are doing, even if they're doing exactly what you told them to do, could still not be done very well, or like they're in the sun, or they're wearing restrictive clothing, or their cat scratched their arm, or a number of things can happen. But also just like so there's like, as far as healing and the skin goes, there's the one element of the ink having something in it that you're reactive to, but the other is like the way that it heals is essentially your skin takes that piece of ink and it suspends it in a little sack, right? And
Mm,
it's sitting in your skin. It's a foreign object. And so the skin, like good, healthy, basic healing will be like we've surrounded the ink into the little sack and now it's safe. It's foreign, but it's safe. It's sitting there. It can't touch us. And that's all. That's all. That's the healing.
mhm,
But maybe your body is like, no, it's still foreign. It still keeps attacking it, right? So there's a reaction
mhm.
because there's a foreign object in your skin. Or it can come later, right?
Yeah.
Like with my eczema or psoriasis, when it's later realizes it's like, no, there's still a foreign object here in the skin.
Yeah. Yeah. What's going to be interesting is this is the first time that I've had patches show up on a tattoo, and as um, so I have Kaiser. Their dermatology department is not the best. I've had a lot of really mixed experiences with them, and again, that's really common. Like people, the narrative that I see again and again is like we just get told the same things, we get given the same medications, they don't really work. The sort of first I would say like stage one is they give you a range of like steroidal creams and things to try and sort of calm the skin down. And that combined with, dietary recommendations, right? Like,
I'm so curious. What are those? What do they tell you?
the diet stuff, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's, things they say coffee is supposedly really bad for it. So, at some point I might actually try to go off coffee.
Mm-hmm.
They say coffee, anything that kind of dries you out. So coffee, alcohol, just things that aren't necessarily the best to put in our body, right? And I do drink some alcohol. I do drink coffee. I try and offset that with like a lot of water, a lot of, kind of probiotic stuff. I eat really healthy. Some people swear by like a low inflammation diet. Sometimes people have a lot of like GI sensitivities along with this. And then later on in life, you can develop like rheumatoid arthritis and things like that. And so as I'm getting older, I am noticing some of that stuff. So, like, in my joints, I can't wear my rings anymore. Like, and some of that's aging and some of that's related to this. It runs in my
Mm-hmm.
family. So I've watched the older people in my family also kind of deal with this. Um, so at some point, I'll have to get assessed for arthritis. Dietary stuff. Some people really swear by herbal supplements and things like that. I've tried gluten free. I've tried a ton of different kinds of diets and just kind of settled on trying to be overall healthy. I'm pescatarian, but some people actually say that meat is actually can be really good for it. But I'm kind of like a everything in moderation
Mm-hmm.
kind of a person, and eat what your body is kind of giving you the signs to eat is kind of how I kind of go on it. They say exercise is really good because stress can definitely increase a lot of autoimmune stuff. So,
Right. So exercise is a de-stressor.
yep, exercise, taking care of anything where stress is going to show up in your body. So
Mm-hmm.
exercise is really good. Massages, just kind of taking care of yourself like that is
Mm-hmm.
kind of part of my routine. And then, when my skin gets really bad, I actually had a really good experience with a dermatologist at Kaiser, which blew my mind. It was this guy, and he was actually really, really great and really kind, and put me on this whole new regime of creams. Luckily, I work from home because it's it's a lot. It's a lot to manage,
Mm-hmm.
and it's given me a whole new perspective on people that live with more intense chronic illnesses, just in terms of the medical care, the daily grind of it. It's with me forever. Like when I travel, I have to carry all this stuff with me. If I go camping, it's a whole pain in the ass. So it kind of affects you every single day. It's like this background noise.
So
And
there's never a time when you're like, I'm not having a flare up. I don't need to put on these creams. I don't need to take these medications. It's like never the case.
not in years.
Okay.
Yeah, it's every day.
Damn.
Yeah, it's a lot. So, and actually, I mean, talking about it, the more I've talked about it, and I'm working in mental health now, and I think it's helped me a lot to talk about it because I didn't talk about it for a long time. I felt really embarrassed about it. I felt really gross. Your skin is like literally flaking off, like, and kind of I hit a couple of low points where, I like didn't even want to go outside. Like I didn't want to wear anything. I would just want to be covered like head to toe and not show it. I'm really lucky. My partner is very supportive. Really great at like reassuring me that, you know, my body is not gross and that this is just a condition and things like that. But it's really hard not to internalize that stuff.
For sure.
Especially working as I used to work as a photographer, right? It's all about, you know, images and things like that. And ironically, a lot of my work is about body positivity.
Well, for sure, right. I was gonna say, like, you can find beauty and you show, not that you can find beauty, but when your photographs show the beauty of all the bodies,
Mm-hmm.
all the, like, all the skin, all the everybody. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um,
I think it's
yeah,
harder. I think a lot of us are harder on ourselves than we are on other people,
for
right?
sure.
We say things to ourselves and feel things about ourselves that we would never put on somebody else. And I definitely was doing that. And things switched for me in the last couple of years because I was like, I'm going to live like this for the rest of my life. I've got to find a way to love myself and to accept myself. I fought really hard to feel comfortable in this body, and I'm not going to let this dominate the rest of my life in a
Fuck
negative
yeah.
way. I have to
Fuck
find
yeah.
a way to feel comfortable and cute, and and it's, I have days, some days are better than others.
So what has it been all about talking about it, like out loud, saying it out loud, telling people about it? Has that been the main way that you felt better about it?
So far,
Yeah.
it's been talking, being tattooed was part of it, right? I mean, walking into, the people so far, the people that I've worked with have all been like queer people, queer non-binary people, trans people, women. Like the studios that they work out of have been really affirming, comfortable spaces, and that's like another shift, I think, in tattooing that's just been so amazing. I think when I was younger, even before I had the skin stuff, tattoo parlors were like these really intimidating kind of like male dominated spaces that I didn't feel comfortable in.
Mm-hmm.
And now there's all these incredible artists that are, queer, women, trans people. Like it's awesome, and are creating really safe spaces for us as clients. And that opened the door for me to go, okay, even though I have this skin stuff, this might be a space and an artist that isn't going to be weird about any aspect of my identity.
Do
Right.
you want to shout them out for folks listening?
No, I knew you were going to ask that.
I mean, you don't have to. I think
Yeah,
that,
no. So the person who did my cover up and my piece is Taya Blank at Magnetic Arts, and I love, like, they have a roster of just really amazing people that work there. I feel like there's so many good studios here in the Bay Area.
yeah.
And I could like go through my Instagram and like just, I don't know. There's all these people that I want to work with at some point, but I need my skin to like chill a little bit.
Yeah. You'll know when the right like time will be again.
Yeah. And I actually have thought about, in addition to sort of talking about it, and I really appreciate what you're doing with this podcast in a lot of ways, but I have thought about doing like at some point doing like some self-portraiture, doing an art piece about it. I've moved away from photography and I'm working in clay now. And I've definitely made pieces about bodies and things like that. So I'm kind of working towards a very vague kind of narrative here, but that kind of incorporates, bodies and shapes and kind of twisted forms and things like that, right? And a lot of that, some of that is about being trans and like our relationships with our bodies, and then how do we reclaim and sort of take control of the narrative of our bodies, right? Either through surgeries or other affirmative things, through tattooing and body modification. I haven't quite built. I'm doing a lot of experiments of what it could look like.
Well, earlier when we were starting to talk about it, I had these kind of two things pop up in my mind about the texture of a skin condition. Mm-hmm. Like first, you'll see these photos online now where somebody will be like squeezing their skin together or something, and it'll be like just the texture of like the skin wrinkles together, right? Mm-hmm. Or showing like cellulite or whatever kind of skin texture, but in like a really artistic way where it's just like the shadows and the highlights are like kind of brought forth in the picture, and like it's cut in some way where you're not even really sure it's a body. It's just like, here's a combination of, or like here's a comparison of like how the earth looks from above and like how the skin looks from above, right? So I was thinking about how textured skin from whatever condition, from whatever happens to it, can be beautiful no matter, right? Like if it's like a black and white photograph of texture of just like shadows and highlights. So I
Yeah.
was thinking about that earlier, but also if you have texture show up on a tattoo that exists, what if it's like a creature and its body is like texture, right? And it's like your skin naturally creates the texture of
Right.
the creature. But yeah, like ways to own what's happening and ways to like honor what's happening, even as it is partially suffering and pain, to like not push it away, but to say like, yes, it's here. Like, yes, this is what we're dealing with in this body in this lifetime. Or the way that people will take like their stretch marks and they'll paint them like bright colors or like highlight them right with makeup or something. Like what is an artistic way, an artful way to show that texture is beautiful?
Yeah, celebrating cellulite, right? Celebrating scars, stretch
Right,
marks. Like
stretch marks,
I've seen some
exactly,
beautiful
wrinkles.
tattoos, and that really highlight things that society has framed as a flaw, right?
Yeah,
But or people that have was it called vitiligo? I don't know how to pronounce it, but
yeah, the light, like where the skin loses pigment.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
or and I've seen just some really incredible work, self portraits and other portraits, really kind of celebrating, the diversity of our skin.
Yeah, and it's easier to do when it doesn't hurt, and if it does, it's harder for sure. But there's still ways, even if it's not directly doing it on your actual body, but with a photograph or with clay, with other form of art.
Yeah.
I, I,
I've
I
thought
was
about I've also thought about sometimes like outlining my patches even because
exactly,
they kind of look like topographical maps.
exactly, yeah, exactly. That's totally one of the things I was imagining with makeup or with like skin safe markers or something. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I don't necessarily necessarily know that I want to tattoo them, but I mean that might be interesting too, right? Is create something permanent out of a condition that is both permanent and impermanent in
Like
this way.
permanent in its presence, but not in it's in the way it shows up or where it shows up. Yeah. Um, there was I had this conversation. It was a really long time ago with a partner of mine who's gone, who's passed away now. But they were one of those people in my life, that really just made me think about a lot of things in specific ways. And they were a lot older. Whatever. I think I was in my mid to late 20s, and I still had a lot of like acne and like facial skin kind of issues. Because I'd had pretty bad acne as a teenager, but we were talking about beauty, I think, at some point, and I was like, "Well, this is objectively unattractive. Like, it just is." And they were like, "Said who? Like, what do you mean? Like, what? Why? Why is that? What you think about it? And I was like, "Well, it just is. Like, there's like healthy, smooth skin, and then there's like pimples, right? Like that's objective." And they were like, "No, like there's nothing that's objective about that. Like that's an opinion you have based on societal opinions or other people's opinions or whatever about what's attractive and what's not attractive." And they kept being like, "But what's the proof? Like, there's no proof in what you're saying. It's not objective, right?" And I still think about that, like 20 years later, or not 20, I guess 15-ish years later. And they've been gone now for a bunch of years, but just yeah, like the things that some things we have questioned and said to ourselves, like, okay, there's nothing objective about like femininity being more attractive than masculinity, or um, thin bodies versus fat bodies. We've questioned those like truths that society gives to us as a given. But some things like skin, I think that's like a harder one. It's like the next level.
Yeah, I mean, if we lived in a world where like everybody had psoriasis, people who didn't have it, that would be weird.
Right.
Oh, your skin's so smooth. What's up? What's wrong with you? right? I
Right.
mean, you
Exactly.
can flip the script because these concepts are so arbitrary, right? I mean, for years, the standards of beauty was that people with bigger bodies were beautiful and healthy, or viewed as beautiful and healthy. And
Right.
we live in a culture that views people in larger bodies as unhealthy, despite the fact that all evidence shows that that's objectively not true, right? Like weight and health are not.
For sure.
There's no
Yeah.
correlation.
For sure. But and also just like the gender standards, you know, again, if you have rougher looking facial skin and you're a man, fine. Like there's nothing about that takes away from your beauty. If you're a woman presenting person and you have rougher looking facial skin, like that's bad. You could see your pores, you know, whatever. It's so specific, right? And
Yep.
it's so
Yep.
connected to like the way that our society makes us
Yeah. Or if you're a woman with
operate.
facial hair,
Exactly.
right, of
Yeah.
any kind,
Yeah.
right, and especially if you want to let it grow.
For sure. Yeah. So many double standards.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and what's been interesting, I don't know, for me, it's interesting is the depth to which I had internalized a lot of that. And I've been so grateful in my work to be confronting that with the people that I've been really fortunate enough to collaborate with, right? Like working with people of a huge range of, backgrounds, identities, body shapes, sizes, presentations, gender identities, ways of expressing those gender identities. Like again and again and again, I've gotten the opportunity to like come up with my own biases and my own stuff. And then now in my own body, my challenge is like, okay, can you apply that to yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Can you find that positive regard that I feel for the people that I work with for myself? And that, I think that's harder for me.
For sure, it's harder. It's harder for ourselves, for sure. But what I was just also thinking about is next time I have like a big eczema outbreak, I'm gonna call you and you can come and like take some pretty pictures of it.
I would love that. I would love that. Yeah. And I would, and when I would love to come in and talk about tattoo placement with you and see
Mm-hmm.
what does it look like even in a flare. Maybe that's not the time to be tattooed, right?
Right, but to like plan or
But we
yeah,
can talk,
draw.
yeah, we could draw, we could talk about it, kind of plan for the future, and even what does it look like if it comes back and interacts with the tattoo, which it is now with one of mine.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be interesting to
I'm
see.
so curious about what all that looks like. I wish you would take some really awesome pictures of it.
Yeah, I can definitely do that. And I want to do that also as a record because I'm really curious when the flare goes down. I'm just hoping that it will. I'm trying
I'm
to be
sure it will, as they
yeah,
do. Everything comes and goes, right?
well, the next level of care is systemic medications. And I have a few friends who have had really great results with it, but it comes with some pretty intense potential side effects because it basically lowers your entire immune system.
Oh, I see.
So the doctors are, oftentimes, they want you to do at least 6 months of topical treatments. There's also like light therapy treatments that they try to do. I've tried to do that. It doesn't really work for me. It works well for other people. But basically the next level is if in, a few months my flare doesn't settle down or if it gets worse, that puts me in a position to be a candidate for the systemics. And that's usually a shot once a week and it's self-administered. Extra ironic for someone who's also trans and other medications.
You're used to it. You'll be good at it.
They're the difference is unlike HRT, it actually lowers your immune system. So it puts you at a higher risk for infections. It puts you at, if you even a regular cold or flu can kind of get out of control. And, my brain goes straight to, COVID. And what does that mean to have a lower immune system in a world where now we have this pretty intense virus? I do mask a lot, and actually related to COVID, when I went in for my visit, one of the first questions that he asked was, have you had COVID recently? because he said they're noticing a link between
autoimmune stuff and COVID.
autoimmune stuff and COVID. And I had it last June. I've only had it once, as far as I know. I'm pretty careful for a lot of reasons, but I did have it last June, and I did notice that my skin started to get worse after that.
Yeah, that is the scariest thing I think about COVID, is that it's presents as a cold, but it's not.
Yeah, I got pretty sick, and I was and still am fully vaccinated.
Are you getting vaccination shots like every 6 months or whatever?
I'm not old enough yet, even though I'm kind of arguing for it. If I could, I absolutely would.
Yeah, I know. I also had COVID once, and it has made my brain feel different. Like my memory and my grasp of like words, my vocabulary is not as like quick. Like I can't grab what I need out of my brain so fast, and I really noticed it. But also every time I've had a shot, my whole like, I already have a hormonal system that's kind of out of whack, but it goes further out of whack every time I've had a vax shot. So I'm like, God damn it, it's like can't win with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. That's a whole other, situation, right? So the next step would be to go on systemic, which I'm actually considering. And
what would that mean for getting tattooed?
I probably not much, I mean, I'm pretty meticulous with my aftercare period, just because I have to take really good care of my skin. So I don't think it would change anything. And, the goal, I have a few friends that are on the systemics, and for them, it's like a 95% decrease in their skin. Like it's life changing for people, right? There's people that have, I would say right now I'm at about 30%, 20, like maybe 30% of my skin is affected.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. There's people that have it that are much more affected. Right. And so, shout out to anybody who's really, really affected by it. I mean, for me, it's generally, it's increasing, but there's people that have like really significant parts of their body are affected. And those people, they're great candidates for the systemics, and people have had really great results with it. Like life-changing, I mean, people have it on their face, all over, and it's very painful, really uncomfortable. So it kind of goes beyond just looks, right? It is really uncomfortable, and affects your joints and kind of all these other things, because stuff is happening internally too. So the systemics are kind of the next step, and we've got some pretty good ones, but they do all have that immune suppressing effect. So the doctors are pretty hesitant, and they cost a lot. So sometimes getting your insurance company to approve them can be really challenging. And I don't know, it kind of reminds me a little bit of, well, even now in some places, right? Getting HRT and other hormone stuff covered can be a pain. But I have different ways that people do it, like even having to pay out of pocket to go to a private dermatologist who will prescribe it. And then you can argue that your insurance company should cover it. Right. So a lot of this also breaks out around lines of financial privilege, right? Like if you have the money to go to a doctor, if you live in a place where you can pay out of pocket for a dermatologist. But like all chronic illnesses, there's a huge financial toll that comes up, like not just the medications, but the doctor's visits, getting there, advocating for yourself, all of that kind of stuff can just really grind you down after a while. And then if they won't put you on the medication, it can feel really, really, really disempowering.
Yeah, like I mean, we're so alone in the medical system. Like it takes so much privilege to advocate, to be able to get any kind of help.
Some people also experience like mental like brain fog and things like
Mm-hmm.
that too when they're in flares, right? It's an autoimmune kind of flare up. So people,
Right. It's your whole body.
yeah, people have GI stuff. People have had to go on disability because of brain fog and things like that. Even as I'm trying to find words here, right?
Yeah.
So,
When I was in my 20s and started to have my eczema flare ups, I didn't know what it was, right? It was just this like intense, big, rough patches of skin that itched so bad I would like scratch to bleeding. And I was at the time going to, I won't mention the name, but a small like free clinic was for trans people in SF.
mm-hmm.
And the doctor there kept being like, it's bed bugs, right? And I was like, okay, that's possible, but like I don't think it is. Like I don't think it is. But he kept being like, no, it's bed bugs. So I did whatever you're supposed to do for bed bugs, which is like a whole big deal,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And it didn't go away. So eventually I paid out of pocket and went to see a dermatologist like in downtown SF. And she was like, after I paid the $150, that was so much money to me at
Mm-hmm.
the time. And she was like, it's eczema. And I was like, well, thanks. Thanks. That's great. That's helpful. Because it was like, well, of course it is. There was no, she took 5 minutes with me and told me that I had to pay all this money. That was really a lot for me to pay, but in retrospect, it was like just fucking ridiculous, like the medical system.
Mm-hmm.
And why
Yeah.
was like, he was kept telling me it was bed bugs because I was poor and young and, you know,
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
thought I was dirty or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I think like a lot of chronic conditions, some doctors just don't want to treat it. Like they don't even want to look at it because, they kind of, I don't like, yeah, I don't know. It's just really, they don't believe people, right? Like that doctor didn't believe you. You're like, it's not bed, like, it's not bed bugs,
Yeah.
They either don't believe you or there's an unconscious stigma or a conscious stigma,
Right.
right?
I
Like
mean,
if you have a skin condition that that it means that you're dirty. It means that you're, maybe you're using drugs, right? That
making
your
bad
brain goes,
decisions, sleeping in bad places.
yep,
Yeah. Dealing with bad people, all
yep,
this
yep.
stigma.
You're
Yeah.
unsanitary, or
Yeah.
whatever, Similar with tattoos, right? People think, oh, you've got, right, that it means something. It's so
Right.
interesting, right? How skin becomes this, I don't know, it's like this canvas of other people's projections.
Yes, because that's what they can see, right? And also, this was around the same time I had met the person I had already mentioned. And when I was first taking my clothes off in front of them, we were becoming lovers. I was like, I had this giant patch on my leg that looked wild, and I was like, hey, this is not like a disease; it's like a skin thing. And I got was so like I was kind of like I felt so like sheepish about it, and they were like, I don't care, whatever.
Mm.
And that was so good. It was so good for me, to have that. Like that was the first lover I think I had at that time when I was starting up in my body, and for them to be like, I don't care,
Yeah.
not to give it a second thought was so healing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can definitely relate to that. I mean, I've really held back on dating and being intimate with new people because yeah, it can be this whole other thing to explain. Like, I've had people say like, is it okay to like touch you there? Like, and that's great. Like that people ask, but it kind of just becomes another barrier to intimacy,
Mm-hmm.
right? I have to overcome a lot of that and then like do some explaining. But I've been really lucky to have, some really, really lovely people who can kind of give me kind of like similar to what you got, like get that affirmation that like, no, 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 like it's okay. Like I get it. Like you're fine.
It's lovely to be surprised in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What's your sort of ideal, so say you go on this medication, it works out well for you, you feel the expansion of possibility of getting tattooed. What is your like ideal outcome in another 20, 30 years when you are entering the last phases of your life? How covered are you at that point?
I want to be one of those like hot older people that's just covered in tattoos. Honestly,
Mhm.
you
Just
know.
like just everything, neck, hands.
I don't know. I'm really giving myself permission to have this balance between planning and over planning. I guess I've enjoyed what I would like to do would be to continue to collect work or from artists that I really love and respect. There's like an artist in Berlin that I fantasize about working with. There's
I
like,
mean, feel free to drop names. I love names.
okay, I'm trying to remember her names. One of my dreams is Fyodor Pavlov, who's this like queer trans
Hmm.
artist
Yeah,
who works on the East Coast. His work is like
yeah.
sexy and beautiful, and I would love a piece from him. I mean, given endless money, I would just travel the world, right, and get tattoos.
Do you
Um,
have one of his tarot sets?
I do. His
Yeah,
tarot
nice.
is really great. I've used his deck in session with adult trans clients, where we'll do tarot. Some if I have like a witchy client, we'll do like a tarot kind of pull, and yeah, I just love his work. I think it's like beautiful and affirming and inclusive and just everything.
Yeah, totally. I love his work too. And I love like I think I used to like stalk his Instagram more, but he just has such a cool aesthetic. He's so like this opulence, sort of Baroque, Rococo, like
Mhm,
gold, velvet, candles, like just
mhm,
so his whole just aesthetic, like how he lives is very much like the way he draws.
mhm. Yeah,
It's
I
super
also
cool.
really love how humble he is,
Yeah,
and how it's like even though his house looks very pretentious, but like I don't get the sense that he's like a pretentious person at all. He seems like very chill, and he loves
totally.
Hannibal, which I was very into that show also. So I like kind of just how kind of bloody and kind of gross like some of his work is. I really appreciate that. Um,
Yeah, no, I don't get the pretentious thing at all from him. He's also he's Russian speaking, which was fun. We interacted at some point.
yeah,
So yeah, it's pretty cool.
yeah, but my general plan is I would like to at some point I need to start getting tattooed on my arms because most of my work is on my legs, and I just because partly because of my skin and partly just because of who I am, I don't really wear shorts a lot. So most of my work, like a lot of people haven't even seen. Um, so
Well, so wait, hold on a second. The logic there is that you didn't want it to show.
it's just how it played out because I wanted to do kind of ocean and under the sea kind of stuff, and I wanted that on my legs, and then as I go up I want to incorporate like more. I'm also very into plants, especially California native plants and things like that, so I want to do more kind of floral stuff on my arms. And
Hmm.
then I've been thinking about kind of chest and torso, and I've kind of mixed feelings about that. For me, every time I see these like beautiful chest pieces, and I'm kind of like, oh, that's really beautiful, but I'm not quite there yet. So I'm giving myself just kind of time to, you know, in a way, having a flare up has kind of forced me to slow my roll in a little bit with tattoos, which I think is good. Um, but I think I'm just gonna kind of keep slowly getting work probably for as long as I can. And
There's no end goal. I think I like to imagine what a person imagines for themselves if they do. And some people do. Some people say, I have plans to get a back piece, a chest piece, a sleeve, two sleeves, whatever. But in the end of it all, it's just the process, right?
Mhm,
It's like it's a lifelong process.
mhm. I do
Very
want
few
to get a
people,
I do want to do a
yeah.
sleeve. I actually would like to be more visibly tattooed,
Hmm.
for a lot of reasons, including I don't know. I think they're really sexy on other people. I think they're really sexy on me. I love my work. Like whenever I look at it, it brings me a lot of joy. It makes me really happy. There's a lot of memories associated with it. The process of getting the work was really positive for me. Um, so it's felt really empowering. It's actually helped me feel a lot more comfortable in my body, similar to
Hmm.
how transitioning made me feel a lot more comfortable in my body. And I guess I should have expected that, but I didn't. And so that was kind of an unexpected joy. And so even in the middle of this flare up, I'm still looking at my pieces, and they make me really happy.
Yeah, I love that. And
And they feel really
that
right.
is I think that's the case for, most people getting tattooed. And that's, the people who don't have tattoos who are like, why would you do that? It's not something you can really explain, but it's a way of making your body more your home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they are definitely contagious. Because after I came home and told my partner, who he was like he's not very into body mods at all for himself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and he was kind of like, I'm not really sure how I'm going to feel about your tattoo. And I was like, that's cool. Like, I don't care. Like, I don't really care how you feel. Like, if you don't like it, we'll split up and I'll go find somebody who does, like, I was like, I'm going to do whatever I want with my body. And obviously he's very supportive of that. But he was like, after I got my big leg piece, he was like, oh, that's really hot, actually. And I'm like, yeah, duh.
Well, I think there's like an element too of people thinking when they think of like tattoos, they think of that like 90s, I don't know, butterflies, what used to be called tribal, like all of that kind of bullshit, and the kind of art we all have access to in this day and age, and the kind of people with the kind of skills.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a different thing. I mean, it's fucking art. I mean, all of it is art. That was art too, but there's a
Mm-hmm.
different level to it, a different level of expression, self-expression.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I'm also really lucky that I've worked with artists who I'll come in with an idea and then they'll bring their own skill to it, and it just becomes something even more beautiful than I had imagined. Because
Hmm.
I'm not an illustrator, like, at all. I got into photography because I can't draw for shit. Like, I hate drawing. So
Yeah.
I'm like just in awe of like you and other people's skills in this area. Like, working on skin has got to be so challenging, and I'm just absolutely in awe of the depth of images that come through in people's tattoos. It's absolutely incredible. It's an amazing art form.
For sure. It's its own thing very much, its own medium. I don't think it's really comparable to like drawing on paper or painting or watercolor. It's its own thing for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, well, I wanted to also have you give us your, because you're like, it sounds like you're the perfect carer for tattoos. You're like the perfect client who will take the best possible care of their tattoos. Can you give us your regimen of tattoo care?
Oh no. Here's I kind of just do whatever I'm told. I've used what's it called, Sanoderm occasionally.
Do you do the wet method or the dry method?
What's the difference?
Like the wet method, it's when you have Eucenaderm on for days at a time, which I would not assume would be good for your skin, but maybe it would be.
The longest I've left it on is about a day,
Okay.
right? And then it comes
Yeah.
off, and then just a really gentle wash with mild soap, and then I use um, what was the one you mentioned earlier?
Aquaphor.
Aquaphor. I've used Aquaphor, right? Just a thin layer. Clean hands, always, 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 or gloves in those first couple of days. And then I just do a lot of like air, let it be,
Mm-hmm.
right, in between treatments, right? Don't touch it, don't cover it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I heal really fast. So I've had really good results healing, for the most part.
It's interesting, actually. I have noticed that people with skin conditions sometimes heal faster because their skin regenerates faster. It's
Mm.
part of their condition, so their skin regenerates either too fast, or just like kind of
Mm.
learns to regenerate faster because it's like flakes off more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it can also be like almost a positive thing for healing.
Yeah. I've thought about that, and I've had very little flaking and peeling, actually. And I don't know if that's because I'm really on the keeping it damp, not wet, right? But
Hmm.
keeping it moisturized. The most kind of peeling and that I've had is color work, which I think
Hmm.
is, from what I've heard, that's pretty common. but I actually don't have that much itching, like a little bit. Like I've seen people be like, oh, it's, it's dry, for days. That hasn't been my experience.
Yeah.
And then the most color I've lost was in those reds and browns, which I think tracks with other people's experiences. Just there's something in the ink that some of us our skin just is like, nope. And actually a lot of the color came out, which was really surprising to both me and the artist. Cause she's like,
your skin pushed it out. Your skin was like, this is not going to work for us. So we're going to get rid of it.
Yeeted it right out. So that was really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I tattooed Andy and her family over Christmas last year. And actually both she and her sister had reaction to, because they were similar tattoos. They were slightly different, but they were little sunsets. And they both had reaction to the reds. So I was like, oh, there's like a genetic component too, somewhat here.
Yeah. When I get really in my brain about this, I almost think about making an art piece around getting tattooed and rejecting it, and the body like pushing it out and playing with this idea of like permanence and right, the permanence of a tattoo. But what is it when you know that your body isn't going to respond well? But obviously I'm not going to deliberately harm my body. But I thought it was an interesting process. And I think the artist that I was working with was afraid that I was going to be like really upset about it. But I had already kind of prepared myself, knowing that some people really don't respond well to those tones. I kind of had already prepared myself for it. So I wasn't really surprised.
Yeah, I think, as long as we know that, that it's a possibility and that like it's, willing to go places, hard places with my clients. Like not everybody is, but some people are willing to go those places.
It's that consent factor, I do really want hand tattoos also. That's actually been something I've fantasized and thought about since I was like a kid and saw somebody with tattoos on their hands. And I know that hands bring their own level of complexity in terms of taking ink and holding it.
Yeah, somewhat. I think, I think black will be a good place for you to go in general. I've had pretty good experiences with tattooing people's hands and also my own hands being tattooed. I've never had any eczema like on my hands based on my tattoos. There's also something about like your hands are so much more hardy, I think, than some other parts of your body, right? Because the skin there is tougher. It sees the sun a lot. It's more used to other stimulation. So actually it might be a better place. It's not the case for everybody. Some people do get skin conditions on their hands for sure. But that also tends to be the palm more than the outside. But yeah, that could be a good place for you to travel soon.
Yeah, it's been a goal. Yeah, I do have a little patch on here, so I'm pretty hard on my hands too. Doing
with clay,
all of that. So
that makes sense. The last thing I ask all the guests is, what's a small thing that's been making you happy lately?
Is it super gay if I say my cat?
No, it sounds perfect. But the cat's not a small thing, but you can say your cat.
That's true. In the grand scheme of things, compared to the world, she is.
What is she doing that's making you happy?
Just being. Sometimes I look at her and I'm like, she does this thing where she's very fluffy and she lays on her back with her little white feet in the air and makes little air biscuits. And it just reminds me that in the chaos of this world, that there are these little creatures that can be happy in a sunbeam, and that's all they need. Because I need significantly more than a sunbeam. It feels like it reminds me to just like chill.
I mean, also maybe if you lay there with her and do what she's doing in the sunbeam, like maybe you'll experience that happiness for that moment.
Oh, I definitely get down there with her on the floor, and we hang out together. And then sometimes she just purrs and purrs, and it's that's my meditation, I guess. I'm not a stillness meditation kind of a person. I'm much more of a moving meditation person. So it's a good moment for me to just lay in the sun and purr.
That's pretty great. Yeah. Thanks for coming on the podcast. Thanks for having the idea, because it's often me who has all the ideas, and I'm pretty, I'm only one person. So thanks for having the idea and making it happen so fast, being so available. I appreciate it. So it was like super fucking interesting and I think really useful to a lot of people out there. And I also can't wait to tattoo you.
I can't wait to be tattooed by you. And yeah, thank you for what you're doing with this podcast and, just for the chance to talk about this. I think it's not something that I've seen a lot of people kind of talking about. And I think it's kind of important. And yeah, so if anybody out there hears this and, wants to reach out and talk about this stuff, or is already making art about this or anything like that, like, please reach out to us. Cause, yeah, I think the way that tattooing is changing and being way more inclusive, I think this is a cool opportunity for, for folks like me who are sort of living with these chronic conditions to, just kind of like find more solidarity and find artists and spaces where we can get tattooed and explore that and not feel like it's a big ask or that it's an inappropriate ask or that it's, something that we can't do. Because it is something that we can do.
It is. And as somebody who is living with the conditions, but also is a very thoughtful, insightful person who's also an artist, this is like a key combination here of identities that can come together and like make space for even more opportunities for people to explore themselves and what it means to be alive with all the different ways in which we're challenged and marginalized and also blessed.
Yeah, right. Being in a body is so complicated.
It is so complicated.
To be in a body.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Where can people find you and how can they support your art, work, whatever other things that you'd like people to support? Tell us how.
Yeah, basically, so my personal website is a good way to kind of reach me and see some of my projects. I think like most artists, I am behind on updating my website, but you can definitely reach me through there. It's just tristancrane.com. And then I have an ongoing portrait series of interviews and photographs of trans, non-binary, gender non-conforming people. Basically, anyone who's not cisgender is welcome in the project, and that's at HERE portraits.com. And I've got, I think at this point, like something like 170 people have participated. So if you're interested in participating or adding your voice, adding your story, please reach out.
Okay. And I will have all that linked in the show notes.